Here we go on this cold day. There goes the notification. Ice possible. Temperatures dipping. After it snowed into the new year, you know, all of these things are showing themselves to be prevalent during the wintertime in New York, January. How much time do we have left during these coldest of times? Well, I would say we have about 6 weeks to go, you know. 6 weeks seems about right. And with 6 weeks to go, we are in the depths of the coldest moments. You know, I saw a comment sometime, oh, it's starting to snow again. Look at that. Just talking about it too. And it's starting to snow. See? You can see it back here. It's literally snowing. Now, in this comment that I was mentioning, right? This person was talking, but I'll be right back. Let me just throw this out. I'll be right back. I'm gonna take this off. Yeah, people are running. People are definitely picking up their pace right now because of the snow. It's almost like a not as bad version of rain when it's coming down. Because when it's raining, it's like people run if they're caught out in the rain, you know. But when it's snowing like this, it's like people also pick up their pace because it's like, it's so cold. I got to get inside somewhere, you know. But other than that, this comment that I was mentioning, it revolves around the concept regarding how cold has you like miserable, you know? It's like what I just mentioned. When it's really cold outside, people are like, you know, not as bad as rain, because when it's raining, it's like you get caught out and it's like, oh no, you know, you get drenched. But when it's snowing, it's like, I want to get to where there's warmth. But if it's perpetually cold during certain months in certain places, like out here in New York, it's like, I guess I don't know if it's like studies, because like when this person made this comment, they were equating cold and misery. Like you're miserable when it's cold, right? Now, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, what source, you know? What's the source? Now, I'm not saying that I don't believe that or that may not be true. I'm just curious to know, like, where are you sourcing that from? Where are you citing it from? Like, where is it coming from? Like, is there a study that was done on this? Because common sense wise, anecdotally speaking, yeah, perhaps. You know, Kuba, what's up? How you doing? I know that it also could be a genetic thing, because there are some people, genetically speaking, where like when it gets really warm, they're miserable, right? But then genetically speaking, other people, when it gets really warm, they love it. And vice versa. Some people, when it gets really cold, they can appreciate the cold. And some people, when it gets really cold, it's like a miserable time, you know? Yeah, I do have long hair, Justin. So with that being said, it's like me, genetically, I'm one of those people where if it gets too cold, I'd rather deal with more than 85 degrees than it being like below 40 degrees, and especially when it's windy, you know? So I'm just like, because I'm one of those people genetically where it's like the cold really has an effect in not a good way, then it's one of those things where it's like, you have to push extra hard throughout the times when the coldest moments occur. So despite the coldest moments, it's like, what do you do, right? Like the person said in the comments, like, if cold to certain people, especially genetically speaking, it equates to you being miserable. Because genetically, there are a bunch of people who they just don't appreciate the cold. You know, they're not too fond of the cold. So then it's like, what do you do? Like here in New York, especially Southern New York, we still have, no matter what, we have over 3 months of cold, right? So basically around Thanksgiving to a little past Valentine's Day, right? All of that is super cold, right? And like I said, some people, they love the cold, right? And I think genetically speaking, it pertains to people who can handle the cold. But then generally speaking, those people who can't really handle the cold can handle the heat. And the people that can handle the cold quite well cannot handle the heat, generally speaking. So it's one of those things. And like I said, genetically, I'm one of those people where I just don't like the cold, right? So now, despite the coldest moments, if we're equating cold to it being miserable, then you have to find it from within, despite the cold moments, to push and be able to dig from deep within to get your tasks accomplished, you know, your goals achieved. And if you're trying to achieve greatness, because as you would assume, greatness is not achieved in one day by accomplishing one task, right? It takes a lot of time, right? But every single day that passes, I'm pretty sure you have a list of things that you have to accomplish for the day, right? So if those tasks, and there are certain times each and every single day where you set a task in your mind to accomplish and you're like, I'm going to get this done. And then when the day is over and you're about to go to sleep, that one thing was one of several tasks you didn't accomplish for whatever reason. And then you set it in your mind to do it the next day, and then the next day, and the next day. And you find that it's actually quite challenging to get certain tasks accomplished. Now, despite the coldest moments, and I don't just mean, you know, like literally, because yeah, this you could say these are the coldest moments seasonally, right? Because we're like over here in New York, these times as we dip towards like midnight, early morning hours, it goes into the teens. So if we're going into the teens, then literally speaking, these are the coldest moments. But at the same time, it's a double meaning because it's not just the literal coldest moments, but it's the coldest moments on a day-to-day basis where you're not getting certain things accomplished, but you have it in your mind on a daily basis to get accomplished. And that's what I mean by achieving greatness. You have to dig deep, even when it feels miserable, for you to find it from within yourself to accomplish these things. And that's what it's all about, you know? I'll be right back. I'm going out into the snow. You can still hear me, but I'm just checking the mailbox over here to see if there's any mail. Nope, nothing in here. Let me see if can I attach this possibly? Maybe. Yeah, I'll just keep that here. I don't know, it's not really holding properly. I don't know, it just seems like it's not really holding. But let me check this mailbox as well. Nope, there's nothing here either. So, I'm trying to see like where. I don't know. I put it there, but we'll see. What is today? I think today's Friday, maybe, right? Yeah, it's Friday. So, yeah, that's really it. Usually I take about this long to get my point across. It's about 10 minutes or so, which is what actually happened this time too. Got my point across. we're talking about the coldest moments, right? And that is, like I said, a double meaning because it's not only literally speaking, but figuratively speaking, right? So the coldest moments are, especially when literally speaking, it is actually the coldest times of the year. Because if we're gonna go by that comment that this person made, which is basically equating misery to, you know, these types of temperatures, extreme cold. Because you could think about like Alaska, you know, certain places where it's kind of almost perpetually cold, like upwards of 8 months out the year, right? So in those type of places, if you look at, statistically speaking, within the demographics of the land, like they are, crime-wise, there are certain types of crimes that go down in those types of places, and then they try and equate that with climate. Like they try and equate the same way, like I'm saying the comment was equating cold weather, cold moments to misery, right? Now, if we take a place like Alaska and then we look at the crime rates in Alaska, can you also equate that misery to like certain types of crimes? Where, and I don't even want to go into the crimes because, you know, you could do your own research on that, just Google it. But we have not as severe as maybe Alaska, but here in New York, we have our own versions of where it's like we have to deal with several months out the year of something similar, right? Where it's like at least 3.5 months, maybe 4 months of really cold temperatures. So it's like during these time periods of where it's really cold, you have to kind of push a little. And I'm not saying like, again, there are people that take and deal with the extreme hot temperatures, because New York also has very humid, hot, tropical summers, right? So it's like, it's pretty extreme either way. And like I said, genetically speaking, some people can deal with the cold, some people can deal with extreme heat. Now, if you're like a lot of people who just don't really love the cold, then it's like you have to dig deeper from within to try and get things accomplished, right? Because it's like you don't want to go outside, you know, you don't want to walk around, it's like you're in crazy layers. And it's like you have to fight to find that drive from within to get things accomplished, because your like bones are chilled, you know? So it's interesting. And the reason I'm putting this out today is because I found myself, and it's not just any one or two things, it's several things, right? I like to think of myself as someone who gets a lot done and accomplished, but for as much as I get accomplished and done, there are certain things that I find myself like, damn, another day went by and that didn't get done, right? So it's like, you push yourself in your mind to say, well, this is gonna get done today, right? But at the same time, when it gets to like the end of your day and you're about to go to sleep, it's like, oh, I just want to pass out. You know, I'm so tired right now. I just want to go to sleep. And then another day goes by where it's like, man, you didn't get that accomplished and you're about to go to sleep because you're so tired, right? And before you know it, days pass by and there's so many things that are not getting, because it's cumulative, you know, it adds up. Yeah, so like I went to a local beauty store, Cal, and I just got one of those done, you know, because they were actually selling it. It was like Indian hair, so it was expensive. But I said, let me get that. I'll take it. I spent the $586 and I got the hair, and then I clipped it on, and I was like, hey, this is gonna be my look, you know? So some people put extensions in their hair, others put fake beards on, and that's kind of like what I did, you know? So I think that's really what it comes down to, is you just have to find it from within yourself to be able to make sure you, despite how many times it doesn't get done, you have to then say to yourself, you know what, no matter what, before I go to sleep today, I am going to get it done. Even if 2 or 3 days, like, don't give up. Don't quit on yourself. Don't say, you know what, I'm just laying it to rest because this is just not getting, no. You like, okay, if certain things, for whatever reason, you couldn't get it done the last 3 days in a row, well, today's the day. Today you get it accomplished, you know? And that's what today's live stream is about. It's like, despite the coldest moments and knowing you have to fight from within to get these things accomplished, today is the day you do. Today is when you get it accomplished. And don't go to sleep until you do. Regardless of how sleepy you get and tired you are from whatever you did for the day, you get it accomplished, because enough days have gone by where you just said you were going to do it and then you didn't come through for yourself. So you make it happen. And today is that day. Doesn't matter what time it is. Because right here for me, it's 10:12 p.m. Okay? 10:14 p.m. Whatever. I'm going to get it done. And miles to go before I sleep. And then when I'm tired and I'm worn out and I'm feeling sleepy and I want to go to sleep, I'm going to get it accomplished before I go to sleep. And today is that day. So despite the coldest moments, you push onward and you get it. It's the only way to achieve greatness, in my humble opinion. There's no way you're going to be able to make it happen with fighting and finding it from deep within to make those things happen. Because, I mean, you could be a weekend warrior and you could half-ass it and you could just say, you know what, I that was good enough. I got enough done. Or you could say, wow, I got a lot achieved today and I'm really tired. I just want to pass out, but I still have 3 more things to do. And you knock out all 3. Imagine you go to sleep after knocking those last 3 things out, despite you wanting to conk out. Now you feel like a warrior. Because instead of taking the weekend warrior half-ass approach, no, you literally did everything to the point of where there's nothing else to do. Now you can go to sleep like a champ because you know you're a champ. You crushed it for the day. And that's what today is all about. Despite the coldest moments, you dig deep from within. It could be 18 degrees outside and ridiculously cold and dreary, and it feels like you just don't want to do anything and you just want to cozy yourself under the covers and just pass out and get as much sleep as you can. Great, that sounds awesome, but not until you get it accomplished. If you truly want to achieve greatness at the highest levels, all of that is cumulative. It all adds up. So you make sure you get it done every single day, so that the next day, it's like you don't have to worry about those things that were piling up that you didn't get accomplished, because you knocked it out. Knock it out the park is the only way we cover bases. So with that being said, that's really it. That was my point. Despite the coldest moments, you get it done in order to achieve greatness. And that's really it. Like, you keep chipping away day to day, week after week. Before you know it, 8 months of consistency. Imagine what you could get accomplished in that period of time. It's not a joke. It's not a game. And there should be no excuse. Because if you're not getting things done and you're the reason, meaning you're getting in your own way, because every day there's distractions and there are also despite it seeming like you have no time, there are always opportunities to try and squeeze in some little sliver of an opportunity for you to get what you need to get done. Like I said, no excuses whatsoever. You can make it happen. We get in our own ways. So that's really it, I just wanted to check in today to put this out there because, like I always say, I try and pass, the new year, 26, whether it was 2025, when I'm on that type of time right now anyways. So whenever I get the opportunity, I'm trying to put out positive messages, productive, powerful, and beneficial messages that can hopefully bring about inspiration. Because if I knew someone was there every single time where I could count on them to bring some sort of inspirational, motivational energy, shoot, I would tune in. Why not? So that's what I'm trying. Like, I got it, I got it. So I might as well give it. You know, too many people in the world are concerned about what they can get. They're always trying to get. Like, it's crazy. You want to get so much, but what are you getting? You know? And after you get and get and get and get and get, what are you actually giving? I know I got a lot in life. I got a lot. And I'm not talking about like what you would conventionally think as like I got. But like when I think about the simple things in life and how much I have to be showing gratitude towards, I'm good, you know? Now, I live in a capitalistic nation, right? So my upbringing is kind of influenced by that. But I learned with experience, and you know, I'm not saying that I'm just, you know, someone who's gonna go around like Gandhi and just, you know, preach and give to every single person I can in any type of way. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I have a lot to be grateful for. And at the same time, I personally have learned how to not take directly from people anymore. And that's a blessing. Because when you show gratitude and you know how to show discipline and sacrifice, but at the same time you don't take directly from others, that's an immaculate place to be. And also when you learn financial freedom, independence, and you understand the correlation on a global level to what you're trying to accomplish, financially speaking, and you bring it to a place where you're not directly taking from anyone anymore, you know, then it's like you get to a place where the rest can be ignorant and you can stay ignorant, you know? So that's what it comes down to. And the ignorant shall prevail in their minds, because ignorance is bliss. But when you know, it's a whole different level when you learn not to take from others. And you still have gratitude for everything you have. And at the same time, you learn to give. And genuinely give without expecting in return. So, with all that being said, you know, it's interesting because it's like every live stream I have, it doesn't ever fail, you know? It doesn't ever fail. When folks, because there are a lot of funny people that, or at least they think they are very funny, that come in and, you know, want to try and bring clownish energy. And that's cool. But sometimes when you're having, like, if you go to a funeral, right, and you're giving, you know, you're showing respect to the person who passed away. It could be, you know, it could be your uncle. It could be your grandmother. Do you go into that funeral home or that wake or whatever with clownish energy? No, I doubt it, right? But because, you know, when it's allotted for people to be anonymous, like I always say, they want folks to bring their clownish energy to a choir where they can sing the same tune together. And like I said, you give that energy more credence by actually giving it attention, and that's where it continues. But if you swerve it, because like I said, ignorance is bliss, right? And the ignorant will prevail in their minds. But when you swerve it, then they swerve themselves out of existence. Because like I said, they will continue to be ignorant. And that's completely fine. Because history has always shown that it doesn't ever fail. But as long as I put my message out, that's what's most important. And with that being said, I did, you know? So that's just part of, despite the coldest moments, that's just part of actually getting certain things accomplished. And there's a lot of different things. And with that being said, only one of many has been accomplished. For me, over the next, say, several hours, you know? But that's really it, you know? If anyone has anything to chime in on, feel free. And if it's not trolling energy or clownish energy, I'll definitely engage. But otherwise, you know, like, if you're intelligent and you show your wits with at least intelligent humor, I could get down. But if you're just ha ha, he, clownish, you could get swerved. But that's really it. You know, like I said, it's like when I ran a business for a while, right? And when I was running this business, there are a lot of killers around, right? You know, I don't know anything. But at the same time, I know there are a lot of killers out here in these streets. And when they come around me, it's like, I know what you do. I know you're running reckless in the streets. You know, I don't want to know anything specifically, but when you come around me, just understand I'm legit. I'm legitimate. I'm legal. I do everything how I'm supposed to do it. So when you come around me and see that I'm a square, it'd be boring for you because you're used to being reckless. You're used to being how you are, running wild the way you are. So when you come around me, it's like, it's not my cup of tea. So that's why I say, like, when the ignorant come around with clownish energy, it's the same thing. You'll get bored with me quickly. Because I stay consistent, I stay driven, I stay determined, I stay focused, and I do this all the time. I will outlast you. So when you bring clownish energy around, serious energy, that's staying positive, you'll get bored with me. It's like the killers that are out here in the streets that come around me and see that I'm doing what I'm doing legitimately. We different. You're not like me, I'm not like you. And that's what it comes down to. So, with that being said, you know, I just wanted to thank any person who came in, whether you have clownish energy, ignorant energy, positive energy, beneficial and powerful energy, whatever it is, I appreciate it, you know. Unfortunately, if it's clownish, I swerve it. But if it's fruitful and beautiful, I embrace it. You know, that's how it's always going to be. And like I said, I stay consistent. I will continue to outlast the trolls. I will outlast people that deserve to get swerved, you know. And 2026 has only begun. So we're only starting. I'll be here all year, day after day, you know? So I wish this year to be a purely productive, beneficial, positive, and powerful one for all of us. You know, I say that all the time because it's like manifestation, you know? And it's not just like blindly saying this is what it is, but at the same time, you should be believing in, because your mind can control a lot, right? So if you think, look, if you push in the direction of what you're trying to achieve, then chances are you're setting yourself up to be in a position of achieving greatness, right? Because if you're not thinking about it all the time, then it's like you could be like the killers around me getting bored because I'm thinking not about the next body I catch, but about the next accomplishment that I'm trying to achieve, right? So the killers are going to basically get bored with me because it's like I'm not on that type of time, right? And when I do live streams, if I'm constantly churning out productive energy and clowns come in here with trolling negative energy, you're going to get bored with me, you know? So that's what I mean. Like you have to keep pushing to get things accomplished despite the coldest moments. And that's really it. Audrey, I don't know if it's Nordic. It's definitely messy right now, that's for sure. Like it definitely has to be braided again, you know? But I'm really in like, I guess like a Viking would be. I have that kind of mindset right now because it's like, in my head, it's like I got to get so much done, you know? And it's not just for 2026, it's for January. It is literally for this year. I have to get so much done, but starting in January, month after month, there's a quota for every single week, you know? Every single day. Today alone, there's a lot of things I need to get accomplished. So forgive me for being messy with my beard and my braid, but I'm not even thinking about it, you know? Because if I came here and I was like, oh wow, you know what? I'm gonna do a live stream. Like I want to make sure I'm like looking great. I'm like, you know, I got everything on point. No, I don't do any of that. I just have something on my mind I want to put out there. I think it's important. Despite the coldest moments, we stay productive. That's what today's live stream was about, plain and simple. And it's the double meaning because it's so cold outside, where it's like in 3 hours, it's going to be 18 degrees outside, right? So it's a double meaning because it's extremely cold, literally. And then figuratively speaking, it's a cold moment because they're kind of correlated. When it gets really cold, it becomes tougher for a lot of people to actually find it from within themselves to actually get things accomplished. So that's what I mean. Despite the coldest moments, you find it from within yourself to get things accomplished. And that's really it. That's what today was about, you know? So I'll get this beard fixed up. I got to get a track knocked out. That's just another thing I have to get done. Because I got this joint done. It's called Flames. And yeah, I feel bad for this woman. She's got like she's like checking in the dumps in the trash bins, and she's got like this fur type of coat on. And like okay, the coat looks warm, but you're out here, you know? You're outside walking around. Like I wish you were in a shelter and not out here, because it is brick. It is OD cold. And I always talk about this too. You know, like when it is 15, 18 degrees outside and you're out in these streets, like checking in the garbage cans, like I wish you would just find it from within yourself to like get the help that's necessary to be able to stay out these streets. Because this is no joke. When it's teens outside and there's a little bit of a wind blowing, nah, next level cold, you know? I'm sure there are places where it gets to like below zero, and that's rare out here. Yeah, we might get single digits a few days out the year, but listen, when it gets to teens or single digits, you have no business walking these streets, and you have nowhere to go, you know? I'm just saying. But yeah, that's really it. I just wanted to check in and say hi. Make sure I put the message out on how important it is to stay grounded, stay driven. And yeah, these are the coldest moments. But as long as you stay focused and you find it from within, you get it accomplished. And before you go to sleep, and when you're feeling extra dreary, find it from within yourself before you go to sleep to knock those one or two extra tasks that you're saying like, oh, I'll do this tomorrow, or like, oh, I'm so tired, I just want to pass out. Find it from within yourself to get that done before you go to sleep, because that's cumulative, right? So, and you'll find that if you do that, you will actually notice how that may actually happen every single day. Meaning there will be at least one task, if you really focus and you really pay attention to what you're bypassing every single day, you will notice that on a day-to-day basis, you are actually letting things go and you're letting them slide when you shouldn't. Like, you should be getting them done, right? We all have it. If you really think about it and you really pay attention, you know you're letting things slide that shouldn't get brushed aside. So make sure you find it within yourself to get those things accomplished before you go to sleep. That's my message for today. And I hope it inspires, Warrior. I hope it inspires different people, because if you do pay attention and you get those things accomplished, you will feel like the ultimate warrior going to sleep. Now you can sleep like a champ because you know there were two things that you were so tired you didn't want to get accomplished, but you knocked them out despite feeling so tired from the day. Think about how much more accomplished you're going to feel going to sleep. Like, you could literally rest that much easier because you said to yourself, like, wow, I did that. I didn't want to do it despite it being in my checklist for the day to get done because I was so tired, but I got it done. That's just what it comes down to. And that's really everything I wanted to point out for you all, And I appreciate it, Bong. That's what it comes down to on an everyday. Make sure you make that a habit. Turn that into a habit. And cumulatively speaking, the more you get that accomplished consistently, then you already know. Audrey, I don't You can't get to sleep. You cannot get to sleep because it's 3:38. Shouldn't that be a time for most people to go to sleep? If it's past 3 o'clock in the morning? And where are you located? Are you in like, it's like a 5-6 hour difference, 5 hour difference. Where is there a 5 hour difference? Like Hawaii? I don't know. Where is there a 5 hour difference? I don't know. I don't know which one is forward or back. Oh, Scotland. Okay, that's cool. Interesting. Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. You know? Shite the melody. It's all great, you know? I wonder, because people say Nordic and Viking all the time. Do folks out there have like big beards? Or is that like old school? Right? Or is that something that people just started, you know, rocking again out here? But like for for people in like, let's say Scotland, they don't even have beards anymore. You know, I wonder. I'm pretty sure there are not too many people in Japan that have beards. You know, I don't know if that's a genetic thing or if it's a cultural thing. But oh, okay. Scandinavian countries as a whole, in my humble opinion, have a lot of positives that we can learn from. You know, there's so many things these nations do that basically it's like, oh, okay, that's good to hear. You know, I'm sure it helps with a little bit of internal climate control, you know. But yeah, these countries are definitely places we can learn from because they're very forward thinking and they do things that in my opinion for many many years now me being an American and I'm a patriot, but I think to myself, like, wow, you know, if the US could do what some of these countries do, we'd be so much better, you know? And like I said, a lot of these countries, they are, they're pretty powerful in what they do. And don't get me wrong, like us being a capitalistic nation, I'm totally with that. Like, I like that. You know, I like that we are capitalists. Still. Now, I don't want the government to tell me what to do. I don't want the government to enforce anything on me. And I want to retain the ability to be a capitalist. But, like I said, some of these nations, they do things that are powerful, that I can say, wow, you know, the US should learn from some of these countries. Like I said, forward thinking, they've been like this for decades and successful as a result. So, yeah. I think I think a lot of these taxes that we pay, unfortunately, are just being squandered. You know, it's being squandered in a lot of ways. You know, then on top of everything, it's being squandered, and inflation is through the roof. So it's like the cost of living has been going up and up and up, and it's like People are fooled because you don't see the dollar changing, but you're not really equating it to the cost of living going up, and salaries are not really changing, and the minimum wage is barely moving. So it's one of those things where it's like, this is nuts. And if you understand how all of this works and you know how to become wealthy, then you make it work in your favor. You know? But for most people who don't really even think about it on the level you're probably supposed to be thinking about it, people remain ignorant. And then that same, however much money you have in the bank, you're losing 10% of its value every year. And you don't even know that's happening because you see the dollar amount staying stable, which is crazy, but it's true. You know, all you have to do is just look at the deficit. Just look at the cost of living. Look at the minimum wage and your salaries. You know? So, I think no matter what you do, you should put your money into some sort of investment that makes sense. No matter what that investment is, it's a security, a commodity, whatever it is, make sure you invest. And as far as what you're saying here, you know, name checks out, by the way, but interesting, right? Nah, I wouldn't say not crypto. I think you should do your research, Bon Jovi. But as far as what you're saying about the eyebrows, that's interesting. Now that you bring it up, I think that is probably kind of true. Like I would think like the eyebrows would correlate to that, you know? Yeah, well that's honest. If you're scared, that's one thing, right? But you have to know what you're doing with any investment, right? But you also said not crypto, which is the highest returning asset class, right? So because you may be ignorant and fearful, that doesn't mean you can't get ridiculous returns off of it, you know? Yeah, but if we're talking about just actual, like, natural hair color, then I think Troll over there has a good point, you know? But you know what? Everything in life is that way, Bon Jovi, as far as being like a winner or a loser. You know, everything is like that. And then you have to get a lesson from all of that. Like from your experience, that's where the wisdom comes. And what did you learn from it? And I can tell you, shoot, you have to use your intelligence to be able to make a determination based on what you learned. You know, and when you do that and you do it properly and you don't stay stuck and you don't stay stubborn and you adapt and adjust accordingly, especially in a capitalistic nation, you can make, I mean, obviously you got to go through it, right? If you're investing, you have to go through it, no matter what it is. You have to learn. And in order to become a winner, you probably have to lose. And you have to lose a lot before you can actually seriously win, you know? So some things you just can't fear. You have to go through it, you know? Well, if you consider yourself a half full, a cup half full person, then that's generally more positive than anything, right? So that's, I mean, that's a good way to, consider yourself being. And yeah, it is also good to consider yourself neutral, objective. You know, I think that's a good standpoint. Moving around neutral is generally, I mean, at the same time, I'm pretty sure when it comes to certain things, you will also consider yourself a winner. You know, might be a loser in certain things, but if you're half full with your perspective, then you're probably leaning more towards being a winner. Yeah, I feel you on that, Bon Jovi, because I can relate, and if it works for you, you know, and that's a win, then that's a win. You know, you can't you can't negate the wins. And generally speaking, in life, if you get at least close to a double, usually that's a win. So real estate is relatively safe. It's relatively stable. And if you get a double, and like I said, you have a situation there where you're talking about, you know, it's accrued value, and at the same time you actually get to stay there. A win is a win, right? So I salute that. Oh wow, Audrey, that's I appreciate you sharing that. You know, that's congrats on all these, you know, family members you have there. You know, but it's also good to hear that they are providing that for you. You know, for your situation physically. Congrats on that as well, Bon Jovi. That's that's awesome. You know, there are a lot of people who can't say they've been able to do that for themselves. You know, so where you actually have it, where you've saved that kind of money, over six figures, you know, and yeah, that's amazing. You know, that's like the best case situation. Like if you have a place and that place is yours and you have no mortgage and you have savings like that, because I'm sure, you know, you apply being frugal, you know, and that's just being smart, right? I wouldn't even really call it being cheap. I'd call it being smart, right? If you're frugal with your spending and your savings, and you've, like I said, you no mortgage, and then you were able to build that type of savings, it's awesome. You know, there are a lot of people who don't have $1,000 saved, you know? So if you have almost 200 times that, quite literally, think about that, right? You're good, you know? Now, I'm not going to say, in my humble opinion, that you're like free, right? You still have to have the mentality of someone who's frugal, right? Even though you're in that type of situation, because it's not like and I'm not putting you down in any way. It's not like it's 1.8, right? And it's not like it's 10.8, right? But it's 180. And that's better than someone who has 1,000, right? Or $80 or $800, right? So you're in a really good situation. So congrats on that. You know. I wish you the best, Audrey. I hope that, you can beat this. I don't know what stage you are. I don't know what type it is, but I hope that thing doesn't beat you, and I hope you defeat it. You know, that's what I genuinely wish for in 2026 for you. You know, I hope you crush that thing and obliterate it to smithereens. My cousin just passed away. She was younger than me. He left behind 2 kids. So it's one of those things. And Bon Jovi, good for you, man. You really did that. That sounds like a quite the business to be in, especially early on, and to save that kind of money. Good for you. That shows that you have discipline and you're able to sacrifice to be able to save a solid amount like that. Yeah, that definitely sounds like something from your neck of the woods, Audrey. And the pounds will look after themselves. Yeah. I think it's very, very, very important for us to be frugal and really pay attention to the discipline necessary and the sacrifices necessary to be able to get to places where we can save money like that. You know? But I applaud the both of you for grown talk. No, it's actually an ermine, and they change colors depending on the season. When it's the summertime, it goes back to dark, and in the wintertime, it turns white. You know? What's up? What's up? Oh, okay. Yeah, I think Oregon, um, yeah, since you're right near Cali, northern Cali, I would assume like that's like the prime area where like the best some of the best stuff is growing, and like you have a lot of people doing that, business wise. So yeah, I could imagine. But hey, you learn what you learn, you got what you got, right? So that's that's awesome, right? That also seems like an awesome state. Oregon, I think based on what I heard, because I've never been there, but based on what I've heard, Oregon is one of those states where it's like, and again, I don't know anything about it, but like I see like green, healthy, active, um, forward thinking, almost like where Audrey's from, you know? And yeah, I hear a lot of good things about Oregon. So yeah, it sometimes in life for people who, kind of, you deserved it, right? If you play your cards right, and eventually it gets to a place where it's like things start working out. And when they work out, then you look back and it's like, you could describe it however you want to describe it. But the fact of the matter is, you probably had a lot to do with that, right? Because you could have squandered it, right? Like a lot of people. Like I know this guy in Yonkers, right? So I got this piece of property several years ago, right? I appreciate that, Audrey. And, I hope you get your sleep. And I hope it goes well for you. And thank you for coming through and chiming in. And we'll speak to you next time. And have a good night. So this guy, right? Like I got this property years ago. And there's this dude that I seen, right? And he was talking to me around that time when the property was first acquired, and was basically saying how much his dad gave him, right? Like he had two pieces of property in the same area, right? Fast forward, and this is why I say this, Bon Jovi. Fast forward over the last 3 years, he has deteriorated so much. He lost everything because he's an alkie, right? Super alkie. And he walks around. He's homeless. He sleeps outside. He walks around and he begs people. Remember, when I first got the property, this was the same dude that was talking to me about, like, yeah, my dad gave me two pieces of property. He squandered it. Bro, what's up? And he lost everything. And now, like, when you look, it's incredible. The same person. He was coherent. He was talking to me. He was telling me everything. He was like, oh, great, you're fixing the place up. The neighborhood is thankful that you're fixing the place up, all of that. And now he is like a shell of that person. And he lost everything. So that's why I say, Bon Jovi, it's like you could have squandered it, but you probably deserved it, Because you called yourself a cheap bastard, but in actuality, you're frugal, which requires discipline. Right? Because you could have been, and, I'm not just crapping on that guy, but at the same time, he drinks every single day. Right? So where you're a cheap bastard, he's not worried about that. He just wants to get the alcohol. While you are saving 6 figures times 2 with your mortgage paid off. Big difference, right? You probably deserved it because you didn't allow distractions to get the best of you. Yeah, and I don't know too much about these places. I don't even know what's going on with Portland, but I just heard a lot of positive things about Oregon as a state. Because sometimes you could look at a whole state and say, wow, this state, like, there are a lot of pluses, right? Oregon as a state, you're getting, like, you know how they do those surveys, or they do those, like, I don't know if they're like polls where they're just like certain states get like their rankings, right? It's like they're ranked like top 10 and whatever. Oregon's in the top 10 for a lot of different rankings, a lot of different categories. So that's why, like, I've seen it before. So, and some of these things I mentioned is what I remember, like active, green, healthy, nice. Right? Like if you hear, like I'm in New York, right? Like I'm usually around New York City, right? So it's like you hear, like I'm in the Bronx all the time, right? So it's like you'll hear a bunch of not so nice things ranking wise about the Bronx, right? Even though, I love the Bronx, but when you hear Oregon, you hear a lot of pluses, So it's different. But cheap to me, like there's a difference between cheap and just being frugal, right? To me, cheap is like, you know what? Like you're going out of your way to like just, even when you know there's certain times when you probably should spend, you still won't do it because it's like, no, I'm not going to do it, right? But being frugal is like you see certain things and you see them as a distraction, and you know if you spend on those things, it's like it's really unnecessary, and it's kind of like a leak. Like it's like a gradual leak that shouldn't be there. So you remove it, and you're being frugal, exercising discipline by doing so, right? So yeah. So if you're being frugal, it's like you're being, like I said, Bon Jovi, you're being smart, right? Well, you know what? At least financially speaking, the smokes, I like to smoke too. I just I just kind of don't do it because I just, realistically speaking, I'll like smoking for the rest of my life. But realistically speaking, when I'm honest with myself, I just don't like what it does. You know, just don't like what it does to me. Regardless of how relaxed I get, whether it's indica or sativa, I don't. There's too many negatives, right? And that's just me, because I just don't, like. I won't be driven. I won't be the highest version of myself, in my humble opinion, when I do. That's why I do my best to stay away from it. You know, financially speaking, in your situation, like I can see that like you can rationalize to yourself why it's not, taking a toll on you in that respect. But like I said, me personally, I stay away from it because, like I said, it takes away from my drive. It sometimes like throws me off scheduling wise, throws me off timing wise. And like I said, the drive is a big thing as well, you know? That's right. And that's just being smart. When you are able to learn how to do things yourself, I'll give you an example myself, right? Like you mentioned with the cars. So my boy, right, when he wanted to link up with me, because he knows I know how to engineer, and you know, we we do music together, right? He's like the only person I like doing music with. He's like, yo, we gotta link up. Yo, I gotta come over there, and I gotta, you know, we gotta lay a track down, right? And I'm just like, no, no, we're not gonna do that. You're not gonna come over here. You're not gonna link up with me, and we're not gonna do tracks together, because then you'll be waiting on me, and you'll be waiting for me to engineer your stuff after you wait on me to record us. That's not gonna happen. What you have to do is you have to become your own engineer, and you have to learn that whole process. You have to invest in Logic or Pro Tools or Acid or whatever it is you want to get as far as a DAW, right? You have to learn that. You have to become an engineer. You have to get outboard gear, plugins, and your own vocal chain and learn exactly what to do. And he did. And now he's in a position, like you said with the vehicles, right? Where you don't have to pay an engineer or a studio for studio time because you learn how to do that for yourself. You are the engineer. You are the studio, right? You have the studio. You are all of that. So that's why when it came down to it, yeah, and you know, in my humble opinion, like this is my boy, right? Like I wouldn't mind doing it, but it's like I saw it ahead of time and I was like, no, this is not time efficient, right? We're gonna be wasting time ahead of time, right? So that's why I said, like, you can do this, you can learn it. The way I learned it, you can learn it. It's not gonna take you that long. And he did. And of course there's a learning curve, right? I use Pro Tools, but I also use Logic. He tried Pro Tools. He liked Logic better, right? And then he learned Logic. You know, and there's other ones, like I said, Acid, Reason, you know, all the different ones, right? But now he's at a level where it's like, shoot, he's teaching me now, you know? And he's telling me, like, how to use compression and EQing and, you know, et cetera, de-essing and whatnot. And that's the point. Like, it's about learning what you should learn, because being frugal, in my opinion, is being intelligent. It's being smart with how you allocate your time, because we're not ever going to get time back, right? So it's important to be able to maximize time as best as we can, you know? So it's important to be able to pay attention to the different ways where we can set ourselves up to not unnecessarily waste time, depend on others, or spend money, unfortunately, you know? So, yeah, of course. Quincy Jones was definitely the man, you know, in many ways, for sure. That's for sure. But, yeah, and part of my own goal for this year is to be completely debt-free and, in my opinion, at the beginning levels of financial freedom, you know? So that's going to happen this year, and I'm excited for it, you know? Like John Bon Jovi said, you know, or Bong Jovi, Bong Jovi. It's important to get to a place where, you know, you feel fortunate because you have what you have, you know? And once you get there, it's like, I'm here now, you know? I'm not going to squander this. I'm not going to screw this up, you know? Because I know and appreciate what it took for me to get here, you know? So it's important once after you get there and what it took to get there to stay where you're at, maintain it, and possibly get to even higher levels, you know? So I know for me to get to a place of financial freedom, it was not easy, you know? It was very, very, very challenging. It took a lot out of me emotionally and psychologically. And that's another thing, Bon Jovi, like, we put ourselves in those positions, right? Like, let's just use you as an example, right? You have the place, and yeah, there's no mortgage, which is awesome, right? But you can't control the taxes, right? They're going to keep raising the taxes on you as they want. You can't control that. They're going to keep raising the utilities on you, the water, the electricity, the gas, whatever it is, the insurance, whatever it is you're paying for, they control it. So they'll raise it however they want to raise it. And we're in those positions. So when it comes to like what we're mentioning here, it would be a very gutsy move to sell the place and say rent, right? Because you already have the 180, right? If you were to sell it, you'd have a lot of disposable income. And yeah, if you rent, depending on like, again, it comes down to being frugal, right? It depends on exactly what you're trying to do. But if you rent, you don't have to pay the taxes. You don't have to pay the insurance, right? Unless you want like renter's insurance, but like you probably don't have to pay the insurance. You don't have to pay the taxes, right? Certain utilities are sometimes provided. So it's a different situation and you would have a lot of disposable income, right? So I don't know, it's one of those things. But yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I'm not exactly sure what you're saying here, Mr. Pugh, about the Bible, but I hope you live a positive path, regardless of what your faith is. I think spiritually speaking, as long as you are doing your best to be a good person, whatever that actually means to you, because you know what good is, you know what bad is. So if you lead a life, energy-wise, that is probably more positive, I think that's probably the best path to be on. Yeah, I've looked into those too, Bon Jovi, the manufactured ones for sure. Very cost effective when I was actually looking at them as well, and it'd probably be cost effective with the taxes as well, you know. But that's what I was saying. Like we put ourselves into a lot of these situations where if you put yourself in a certain situation where it's beyond our control, and now you give someone else the control of raising rates on whatever they want to charge you, well, you put yourself in that situation, and you don't actually have to put yourself in that situation, so okay, I understand that, Mr. Pugh, but like I said, we put ourselves into a lot of these situations. And like I also mentioned, to be good and to spread love is probably the best path to be on, So when it comes to a lot of these situations we put ourselves into, we don't actually have to do that, right? We don't actually have to do that. So, but like I also mentioned, it is kind of gutsy to get yourself out of a situation like that. Like in Bon Jovi's situation, right, where he has this place that's paid off. It's paid off, and it's like, I'm just like watching my surroundings, And it like, imagine trying to sell that. If you got 180, you sell the place, and then it's like you will have a boatload of disposable income, and then you get a nice little small spot. Obviously, it would be different, right? Because if you don't have maybe you just value your place so much where you don't mind paying the taxes and the maintenance and the utilities and the tax and the insurance and the water and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, and if you value that much, then you can't really complain, right? You got to pay the taxes, like you initially said, right? So, okay, yeah, Queens is a very diverse borough for sure. You know, I'm amazed with the diversity that's there. It's amazing. But yeah, I mean, I'm just getting out of an investment property. And, if it's something you want to deal with and go through, because remember, whether it's, you know, where I don't know if you would get Section 8 or DSS or any of that type of stuff for what you're interested in. But if you're like looking at just regular tenants, you're not always going to get, you know, a responsible person. I don't know how Oregon is, but hopefully over there, people are responsible. But like I said earlier, like when you deal with people directly, you're taking on a lot of liability, and as a result, you have to deal with the stress. Because if it was just as easy as just accepting rent and not taking on much else, it'd be like, yeah, of course. But it's not ever that simple, you know? So that's why I'm like already out. Like I'm out of it. Like I'm out of the investment property and I'm out of business. It's just not my thing. Yeah, I think that's how many places were, um, let's say in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. We're talking about the influence and the dominance of certain groups of people were different, you know? Like in Yonkers too, with a lot of Polish people, Irish, Italians, Polish, Irish, Italians, you know, predominantly. And, there's other groups, Yugoslavian, Czech, Slovaks, different groups. But yeah, that has all changed. The integration of like different ethnicities has definitely changed over time, you know? Yeah, that's very close, and that makes it even more of one of those like situations where it can be like it can it can potentially get dicey, and you don't want your anxiety levels to go up as a result. Yeah, I could also imagine, like, depending on the time, because a lot of different groups of people have been very mean to one another throughout history, you know, whether it was the Japanese or the Cantonese or early Indians or, you know, these Irish people, those Italian people, like the Jewish people, like it were a lot of just, it wasn't the Puerto Ricans, different groups of people. Oh, okay. Yeah. Philadelphia. That's another place. I used to go to Philly all the time, um, many, many, many years ago. Used to go quite often to Philadelphia. Yeah, I don't actually know what's going on with the Somalians. I haven't actually heard what's going on. So I, I I'm out the loop of what's happening there. But whether it's the Somalians or the Nigerians or whichever group is going through whatever they're going through, I wish them the best. I'm not exactly sure what is going on with the Somalians though. But I can tell the temperature is definitely dropping, you know. It's like 20, 26 degrees now outside. Yeah, I could imagine, you know. That was a different time. Out here in New York too, New York City, like the late 80s and early 90s, that was a crazy time too. And yeah, it was around that time with crack and then, AIDS was prevalent. It was a crazy time, you know? So I could imagine. Yeah, I'm a little bit older than you, Bon Jovi. Bon Jovi. But happy birthday, man. I don't know how when that came about, but yeah, hopefully you had a decent birthday and I hope Oregon is treating you well for someone who's grown up here in around Philly. And yeah, you're welcome. And New York, like your father and all of that. You gave me a bunch of motivation for myself this year because I think this is the year that I will be in a situation myself where I'll finally be relatively stress free when it comes to, what we were talking about, just being more free. And I think becoming free when it comes to what we all try and become free with, which in this case is about, what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, which is basically work, right? And when you become free in that regard, I think your anxiety goes down, you know? Yeah, I don't exactly know what you guys are talking about. The same way I don't know what is going on with the Somalians, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with Portland. I'm out the loop. I don't know what's happening there. Um, but hopefully it gets fixed, whatever it is. Because, like I said, whenever I heard about Oregon, I was definitely hearing a bunch of good things. But yeah, Bon Jovi, think I'm gonna call it a wrap, move on, and just wanted to say thank you for, keeping the conversation going with good energy, with positive and productive dialogue, right? We're having good conversation. But yeah, with that being said, I'm just gonna sign out. As always, I appreciate everyone's time. I value yours as I would hope you value mine. And I will continue likewise, brother. And I will continue to do these as often as I can. And remember what I said. Make sure you accomplish what you want to accomplish before you go to sleep, right? Despite the coldest moments. That's what it's all about. But good night, and we'll catch you all next time.